My family forgot my birthday. Once again. But this time, I decided to use my savings to buy myself a luxury trip to Europe. When I posted pictures, my daughter-in-law commented, "Nice, but when are you going to pay the rent?" When I returned to the country, "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached." I woke up on October 15th with that familiar knot in my stomach. 61 years old today. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this year would be different. Maybe Michael would remember. Maybe he'd call early, like he used to when he was little, bursting into my room with homemade cards and crooked smiles. The silence stretched on. No phone calls, no texts, nothing. I made myself coffee in the kitchen of my small apartment, the same routine I'd followed for the past 3 years since Harold died. The morning news droned on about traffic and weather, but I wasn't really listening. I kept glancing at my phone, willing it to ring. By noon, I couldn't pretend anymore. Michael had forgotten. Again. It wasn't just Michael, though. It was everyone. My sister Linda, who lived 2 hours away but might as well have been on another planet. My old co-workers from the insurance office where I'd spent 35 years filing claims and answering phones. Even Mrs. Peterson from next door, who used to bake me cookies every birthday when Harold was alive. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the single birthday card I'd received from my dentist's office, a generic card with a cartoon tooth wearing a party hat. "Have a bright smile on your special day," it read. I almost laughed, but it came out more like a sob. The afternoon dragged by. I tried to keep busy, reorganizing my closet, dusting shelves that didn't need dusting. Every hour that passed without acknowledgement felt like another layer of invisibility settling over me. Was this what the rest of my life would be? Floating through days that mattered to no one but myself? Around 4 o'clock, I decided to drive to Michael's house. Maybe he was just busy. Maybe Addison had planned something. Maybe I was being dramatic. Their house sat in one of those newer developments where every lawn looked identical, and every driveway had 2 SUVs. I'd helped them with the down payment 3 years ago, dipping into the savings Harold and I had built together. "It's for family," I'd told myself then. "It's what mothers do." I knocked on the front door, holding a small gift bag with a book I'd picked up for my grandson Tyler. At 8 years old, he was starting to read chapter books, and I remembered how much Michael had loved adventure stories at that age. Addison answered the door, still in her yoga clothes, even though it was late afternoon. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect ponytail, and she had that slightly annoyed expression she always wore when I showed up unexpectedly. "Oh, Diane. Hi." She didn't move to let me in. "Hi, sweetheart. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. Is Michael home? He's at work. Won't be back until 7. She glanced over her shoulder like she was hoping someone would rescue her from this conversation. "That's okay. I brought something for Tyler." I held up the gift bag. "He's at soccer practice." Addison shifted her weight from foot to foot. "Was there something you needed?" Something I needed. Like acknowledgement. Like remembrance. Like mattering to my own family. "No, nothing urgent. Just wanted to say hello." We stood there in awkward silence. Behind her, I could see into their spotless living room with its white furniture and carefully arranged throw pillows. Everything looked like it belonged in a magazine. Even their family photos were perfectly staged. Professional shots where everyone smiled at exactly the right angle. "Well, I should let you get back to your day," I said finally. "Okay, I'll tell Michael you stopped by." She was already closing the door. I walked back to my car slowly, feeling smaller with each step. In the rearview mirror, I watched their house disappear as I drove away. Such a beautiful house. Such a perfect family. And somehow, I didn't fit into any of it. That evening, I sat in my living room with a small grocery store cake, a single candle flickering on top. I'd bought it on impulse, telling myself it was silly, but needing something to mark the day. The vanilla frosting was too sweet, but I ate a slice anyway. My phone finally rang at 8:30. Michael's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment, my heart lifted. "Hi, Mom." Addison said you stopped by earlier. I did. Just wanted to see how everyone was doing. That's nice. Hey, I meant to ask. Could you watch Tyler next Saturday? Addison and I have that charity gala thing, and our regular babysitter canceled. I closed my eyes. Of course. That's why he was calling. Sure, honey, what time? Great. Maybe around 6? We probably won't be back until midnight. We talked for another few minutes about Tyler's soccer schedule and Addison's new part-time job at a boutique downtown. Normal family conversation. Nothing about the date. Nothing about the significance of today. When he hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, the remains of my birthday cake growing stale on the coffee table. 61 years old, and I felt like I was disappearing more each day. Not dying exactly, but fading, becoming background noise in my own life. I looked around my apartment, really looked at it. Harold's reading chair still sat in the corner, though I'd never had the heart to sit in it myself. Our wedding photo hung on the wall, both of us so young and hopeful. My nursing degree from 40 years ago, framed and slightly crooked. This was my life, these 4 walls and the memories they held, and apparently, none of it mattered enough for anyone to remember the day I was born. The tears came then, finally. Not the dramatic sobs you see in movies, but the quiet, steady kind that leave you feeling empty afterward. I cried for the birthday that went unnoticed, for the calls that never came, for the growing certainty that I'd become furniture in my own family's life. But somewhere in that emptiness, something else began to stir. A small flame of something I hadn't felt in years. Not sadness, not self-pity, but anger. Real, honest anger at being taken for granted, at being invisible, at accepting crumbs when I deserved a seat at the table. By the time I went to bed that night, the anger had settled into something quieter, but more dangerous. A resolve. A decision forming in the back of my mind, still too fragile to examine closely, but growing stronger with each forgotten hour. Tomorrow, I would do something I'd never done before. Tomorrow, I would stop waiting for my life to matter to other people and start making it matter to myself. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's face when he was 7, standing on his tiptoes to reach the kitchen counter, determined to make me breakfast in bed for my birthday. He'd burned the toast and spilled orange juice all over the tray, but his smile had been so proud, so full of love. When had that changed? When had I become someone he called only when he needed a favor? The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at the banking website. The numbers felt surreal. After Harold's life insurance, his pension, and our modest savings, I had $47,000 sitting in accounts I rarely touched. It was supposed to be my safety net, my emergency fund, my burial money. But what was I saving it for, exactly? A future where I continued to fade into the background of everyone else's life. I'd been scrolling through travel websites for an hour, my coffee growing cold as I clicked through images of Paris cafes and Roman fountains. The prices made my stomach clench. 3 weeks in Europe would cost nearly $15,000. For someone who'd clipped coupons her entire adult life, who bought generic brands and shopped clearance racks, it felt impossibly extravagant. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Thanks for watching Tyler Saturday. You're a lifesaver. A lifesaver. I stared at those words until they blurred. That's what I was to them. Not a person with her own dreams and desires, but a convenient solution to their problems. I closed the laptop and walked to Harold's dresser, pulling out the bottom drawer where I kept important papers. Buried beneath insurance documents and tax returns was a small envelope I hadn't opened in 3 years. Inside were the travel brochures Harold and I had collected during our last years together. When I retire, he used to say, pointing to pictures of the Eiffel Tower and the Leaning Tower of Pisa, we're going to see everything we've missed. But Harold got sick before he could retire. Pancreatic cancer took him within 6 months of his diagnosis, and all our careful plans became memories I kept locked away with sympathy cards and funeral programs. I spread the brochures across my kitchen table, their glossy pages showing couples our age smiling in front of European landmarks. Harold had circled things in red pen: a cooking class in Tuscany, a Seine river cruise, a walking tour of Barcelona's Gothic quarter. The anger from last night was still there, but now it mixed with something else. Grief, yes, but also a strange kind of determination. Harold was gone, but I wasn't. Not yet. I reopened my laptop and began filling out forms. Flight to Paris, October 28th, return November 18th. 3 weeks. Hotels in Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. Not the budget places I would normally choose, but the boutique properties Harold had circled in his travel magazines. My hands shook as I entered my credit card information. $15,473. More money than I'd ever spent on anything except cars and medical bills. The confirmation emails arrived within minutes. Boarding passes, hotel reservations, trip insurance. Suddenly, it was real. In 2 weeks, I would be on a plane to Europe, doing something I'd dreamed about for 20 years, but never thought I'd have the courage to do alone. The guilt hit me immediately. What kind of selfish person spends her life savings on a vacation? What if I got sick? What if Michael needed help with something? What if Tyler needed college money someday? But then I remembered yesterday. I remembered sitting alone with a grocery store cake, celebrating a birthday no one else had bothered to acknowledge. I remembered being treated like a babysitting service instead of a grandmother, like a bank instead of a mother. I called Michael at work, my heart pounding. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I just wanted to let you know I won't be available to babysit for the next few weeks." "Oh," there was surprise in his voice. "Are you going somewhere?" "Europe. I leave next Wednesday." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Europe? By yourself?" "Yes." "Mom, that seems... are you sure that's safe? At your age?" "At my age." As if 61 made me ancient and helpless. "I'll be fine, Michael. But the expense. Dad's insurance money was supposed to be for emergencies. There it was. The assumption that my money, my decisions, were somehow subject to his approval. This is an emergency," I said quietly. "I'm disappearing, Michael. I'm becoming invisible in my own life, and if I don't do something about it now, I never will." Another long silence. "I don't understand." Of course he didn't. How could he? He'd never had to watch his own life shrink down to the edges of everyone else's. "You don't need to understand. I just wanted you to know I'll be gone." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the confirmation emails on my laptop screen. Part of me wanted to cancel everything, to fall back into the safe routine of my small, predictable life. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and searched for luggage. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. I bought new clothes, something I hadn't done for myself in years. Not practical things from department store sales racks, but beautiful pieces from boutiques I'd never dared enter before. A soft cashmere sweater in deep blue, a pair of leather boots that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, a coat that made me feel elegant instead of invisible. I got my hair cut and colored at an actual salon instead of the discount chain I usually used. The stylist, a young woman with purple streaks in her hair, looked at my driver's license photo and shook her head. "We're going to bring out your eyes," she said, sectioning my gray hair with professional precision. "You have beautiful bone structure. We just need to show it off." When she turned my chair toward the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman looking back had silver hair that caught the light, cheekbones that seemed more defined, eyes that looked alive instead of resigned. "You look amazing," the stylist said, and for the first time in years, I believed it. I didn't tell many people about the trip. Mrs. Peterson from next door agreed to water my plants. I arranged for my mail to be held. I called my doctor's office to make sure my prescriptions were current. The night before my flight, I packed my new clothes carefully in the suitcase I'd bought. Not the duffel bag I'd used for overnight trips to visit Linda, but real luggage with wheels and compartments for everything I might need. As I folded the cashmere sweater, my phone rang. Michael again. "Mom, I've been thinking about this trip." "Yes? Maybe Addison and I could come visit while you're there. Make it a family vacation." I stopped folding. Even this. Even my one act of independence, and he wanted to make it about them. "No, Michael. No. This is something I need to do alone. But Mom, I'm 61 years old. I've spent the last 40 years taking care of other people. This is for me." The words felt foreign in my mouth, selfish and strange, but also true. "I don't understand why you're being like this." "Like what? Like a person with my own wants and needs? Like someone who matters?" "I know you don't understand," I said. But maybe when I get back, we can talk about that. That night, I lay in bed listening to the familiar sounds of my apartment. The refrigerator humming, the upstairs neighbor's television, cars passing on the street below. Sounds that had become the soundtrack to my loneliness. Tomorrow, I would hear different sounds. Airport announcements and jet engines and languages I didn't understand. I would sleep in beds I'd never slept in before, eat food I'd never tasted, see sights I'd only dreamed about. For the first time since Harold died, I felt excited about tomorrow instead of resigned to it. The rebellion had begun. The airplane food was terrible, but I didn't care. I was sitting in a window seat watching the Atlantic Ocean stretch endlessly below, and for the first time in years, I felt truly awake. The elderly man next to me was reading a French phrase book, muttering pronunciations under his breath. When he noticed me watching, he smiled. "First time to Paris?" he asked. "Yes, first time anywhere, really. You're in for a treat. My wife and I went for our 50th anniversary last year, changed our whole perspective on life." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but the flight attendant was coming around with customs forms, and the moment passed. Still, his words stayed with me as we descended through the clouds toward Charles de Gaulle Airport. The hotel in Paris was nothing like anywhere I'd ever stayed. The lobby had marble floors and crystal chandeliers, and the concierge spoke to me in accented English that made even mundane directions sound elegant. My room was on the 4th floor, with tall windows that opened onto a view of tree-lined streets and Haussmannian buildings with their distinctive iron balconies. I set my suitcase down and walked to the window. Below me, Parisians moved with purpose along the sidewalks. Women in tailored coats walked small dogs. Men in scarves carried baguettes under their arms. Everyone seemed to belong exactly where they were. For a moment, the old anxiety crept in. What was I doing here? I didn't speak French. I didn't know how anything worked. I was a 61-year-old widow from Ohio who had no business pretending she could navigate a foreign city alone. But then I remembered Michael's voice on the phone. "At your age." I remembered Addison's impatient expression at the door. I remembered my birthday cake, eaten alone in the dark. I unpacked my new clothes, hanging them carefully in the ornate wardrobe. The cashmere sweater looked different here, more sophisticated somehow. The leather boots seemed ready for adventures I'd never dared to imagine. That first evening, I walked to a small bistro the concierge had recommended. The hostess seated me at a tiny table by the window, and I ordered the first thing on the menu I could pronounce, "Coq au vin, s'il vous plaît." The wine arrived first. A glass of red that tasted like nothing I'd ever had at home. It was earthy and complex, and after 2 sips, I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in months. When the food came, it was a revelation. The chicken fell off the bone, and the sauce was rich with wine and herbs that made my whole mouth come alive. I ate slowly, watching people pass by on the street outside. A couple argued passionately in rapid French, their hands gesturing wildly. 2 teenage girls shared a cigarette and laughed at something on one of their phones. An elderly woman walked by with a small cart full of groceries, nodding politely to people she passed. Nobody looked at me with pity or impatience. Nobody expected anything from me. I was simply a woman having dinner, invisible in the best possible way. Over the next few days, I fell into a rhythm I'd never experienced before. I woke up when my body wanted to wake up. Not because an alarm demanded it. I ate breakfast at the hotel's garden terrace, where the coffee was strong and the croissants flaked butter onto my fingers. I walked for hours through neighborhoods whose names I couldn't pronounce, getting lost and finding my way back again. In the Marais district, I discovered vintage shops selling clothes from decades past. The owner of one boutique, a woman about my age with silver hair cut in a sharp bob, helped me try on a vintage Hermès scarf. "Très belle," she said, adjusting it around my neck. "Very beautiful." I looked at myself in her antique mirror. The scarf was silk, printed with horses and carriages in deep greens and golds. It cost more than I usually spent on clothes in 6 months, but when I saw my reflection, I barely recognized myself. The woman looking back had style, confidence, presence. I bought the scarf. At the Musée d'Orsay, I stood in front of Renoir's paintings of women, struck by how they glowed with life and warmth. These weren't young women, most of them. They had wrinkles around their eyes, fuller figures, the kind of real beauty that comes from living fully in your own skin. When had I stopped believing I deserved to take up space in the world? I started taking pictures, not just of famous landmarks, but of ordinary moments that caught my eye. An old man feeding pigeons in the Luxembourg Gardens. A woman my age sitting alone at a cafe, reading a book and looking perfectly content. A mother teaching her daughter to ride a bicycle along the Seine, both of them laughing when the little girl wobbled. Each night I uploaded a few photos to Facebook, not many, and with simple captions. Morning coffee in Paris. Found this beautiful scarf today. The light here is incredible. I wasn't trying to make anyone jealous. I was just documenting this new version of myself. This woman who was learning to exist for her own pleasure instead of everyone else's convenience. The responses surprised me. Former coworkers I hadn't heard from in years left encouraging comments. Mrs. Peterson wrote, "You look so happy, dear." Even some of Michael's friends from high school, people I barely knew, started following my journey with genuine interest. But nothing from Michael. Nothing from Addison. In Rome, I stayed near the Spanish Steps in a boutique hotel with a rooftop terrace. I woke up each morning to church bells and the sound of scooters on cobblestone streets. I ate gelato for breakfast because I could. I bought leather gloves from a street vendor who flirted with me in broken English and made me laugh. At the Trevi Fountain, I made a wish and threw my coin like all the other tourists. But my wish wasn't for love or money or health. I wished for the courage to keep being this version of myself when I went home. I signed up for a cooking class in Trastevere, where I learned to make fresh pasta from a woman named Rosa, who was probably my age, but seemed ageless in her confidence and joy. She taught 6 of us how to roll gnocchi with our fingers, how to fold ravioli so the filling stayed inside, how to time everything so the pasta was perfect and the sauce was ready. "Cooking is love," Rosa said in her accented English. "But first, you must love yourself enough to feed yourself well." The other students were mostly couples, some on honeymoons, others celebrating anniversaries. At first, I felt awkward being the only single person, the only one without someone to share the experience with. But as the evening progressed, I realized something. I wasn't alone. I was independent. There was a difference. When we sat down to eat what we'd prepared, Rosa poured wine for everyone and raised her glass. "To new friends," she said, looking directly at me, "and to women who are brave enough to cook for themselves." I felt tears prick my eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were the kind that come when someone sees you, really sees you, and acknowledges your worth. That night I posted a picture of my handmade ravioli, golden and perfect on a white plate. The caption read, "Learning that I'm good company for myself." The responses poured in immediately. Women my age and older, sharing their own stories of rediscovering themselves after years of putting everyone else first. Widows who had learned to travel alone. Divorcees who had started new careers at 60. Mothers whose children had moved away and who were finding out who they were beyond their roles as caregivers. I stayed up late reading their comments, feeling part of a sisterhood I'd never known existed. Women who understood what it meant to become invisible in your own life, and who had found the courage to make themselves seen again. In Barcelona, I rented a small apartment in the Gothic quarter instead of staying in a hotel. I wanted to pretend, just for a week, that this was my real life, that I was the kind of woman who shopped at local markets and spoke broken Spanish to vendors who smiled at my attempts. I bought fresh flowers every morning from the same elderly woman at the market. She started recognizing me, saving the best blooms and teaching me the Spanish words for each type: rosas, claveles, girasoles. I ate dinner late, the way locals did, sitting at outdoor tables under string lights, watching street performers and listening to languages I couldn't understand but somehow felt in my bones. I bought a flamenco dress from a shop near the cathedral, red and dramatic and completely impractical for my life back home. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I was learning that my life back home didn't have to be the same as it was before. On my last night in Barcelona, I wore the flamenco dress to dinner at a small restaurant the apartment owner had recommended. The waiter, a man about my son's age, complimented me in Spanish and English. "You look beautiful, señora, like a true Barcelona woman." I felt beautiful. More than that, I felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. As I walked back to the apartment through streets lit by amber lamps, my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a comment on one of my photos. I looked at the screen and felt my new confidence waver. It was Addison, and what she'd written made my stomach drop to my shoes. I stood frozen on a cobblestone street in Barcelona, the flamenco dress that had made me feel so beautiful suddenly feeling like a costume. The glow from my phone screen seemed too bright in the amber streetlight as I read Addison's comment over and over. "Nice to see you living it up in Europe, Diane, but maybe think about your family back home. Michael's struggling with the mortgage and Tyler needs new soccer cleats. But I guess that doesn't matter when you're busy playing tourist. Hope the fancy hotels and expensive dinners are worth it. BTW, when are you planning to pay us back that rent money you owe?" My hands started shaking. The warm Spanish air that had felt so magical moments before now seemed suffocating. I leaned against a stone wall, trying to process what I'd just read. Rent money I owe? What rent money? The post she'd commented on was innocent enough. A picture of my paella from dinner, the golden rice glistening with seafood and saffron. I'd captioned it simply, "Last night in Barcelona. Grateful for this incredible experience." But now, thanks to Addison's public comment, anyone who saw it would think I was some selfish woman gallivanting around Europe while my family suffered financially. Worse, they'd think I owed Michael money and was refusing to pay it back. I scrolled through the responses that had already started appearing. Most were from people I barely knew, Michael and Addison's friends who only had one side of the story. "Wow, that's pretty cold, Diane. Maybe family should come before vacation. I'd never abandon my kids like that." Each comment felt like a slap. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, to explain that I'd never borrowed money from Michael, that I'd been the one helping them financially for years. But I also knew that engaging would only make it worse, turn it into a public family fight that would humiliate everyone. My phone buzzed with a direct message from someone named Jennifer Walsh. I didn't recognize the name, but her profile picture showed a woman about my age with kind eyes. "Hi, Diane. I don't know you personally, but I've been following your European adventure through mutual friends' shares. That comment from your daughter-in-law was completely inappropriate and unfair. I've been where you are. Family members who expect you to fund their lifestyle while treating you like garbage. Don't let her steal your joy. You deserve this trip and so much more." The message made me tear up. A complete stranger could see the situation more clearly than my own family. I walked the rest of the way back to my apartment in a daze. The streets that had charmed me all week now felt foreign and lonely. I climbed the narrow stairs to my temporary home, my heels echoing in the stairwell. Inside, I poured myself a glass of the wine I'd bought at the local market and sat at the small balcony table overlooking the Gothic Quarter. The medieval buildings that had seemed so romantic earlier now felt like ancient witnesses to my humiliation. I opened my laptop and started typing a response to Addison's comment, then deleted it. Started again, deleted again. What could I say that wouldn't make things worse? Instead, I called Michael. It was early evening in Ohio, and he answered on the second ring. "Mom, how's the trip?" His voice sounded normal, friendly even, as if his wife hadn't just publicly attacked me an hour ago. "Michael, we need to talk about Addison's comment." A pause. "What comment?" "The one she just posted on my Facebook. About rent money I supposedly owe you." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh, that. What rent money, Michael? I've never borrowed money from you in my life." "Well, not borrowed exactly." His voice trailed off. "Then what exactly?" I heard him sigh, and in the background I could hear Addison's voice saying something I couldn't make out. "It's just, we've been having some financial difficulties. The mortgage is higher than we thought it would be, and Addison had to cut back her hours at the boutique. We were kind of hoping you might be able to help out, like you did before." Like I did before. There it was. The expectation that had been hanging between us for years, unspoken, but always present. "So because I haven't offered to give you money lately, Addison decided to publicly shame me about it?" "She's just stressed, Mom. Money's been tight." "Money's been tight for me too, Michael. Do you know how I'm paying for this trip? With the money your father and I saved for 30 years. Money I've been afraid to spend because I thought I might need it for emergencies or to help my family if they needed it. But we do need it." The words hung in the air between us. No apology for Addison's public attack. No acknowledgement that what she'd done was wrong. Just the simple statement that they needed my money, as if that justified everything. "Michael, I helped you with your down payment. I helped with Tyler's medical bills when he broke his arm. I've babysit countless times so you and Addison could go out. I've never asked for anything in return except to be treated with basic respect. I know, Mom, and we appreciate. Do you? Because your wife just told everyone on Facebook that I'm selfish and irresponsible for spending my own money on myself. I could hear them talking in the background, their voices tense and urgent. She's willing to delete the comment, Michael said finally. That's not the point. The point is that she felt entitled to post it in the first place. Look, Mom, maybe this trip wasn't the best timing, with everything going on. I felt something inside me snap. What exactly is going on, Michael? You have jobs, you have a house, you have a healthy family. What you don't have is a mother who's willing to sacrifice her own happiness to subsidize your lifestyle anymore. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I didn't take them back. Mom, that's not fair. What's not fair is your wife attacking me publicly because I dared to spend my own money on myself instead of giving it to you. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from hurt. It was from anger. Pure, clean anger at being treated like an ATM instead of a person, at having my joy in this beautiful experience poisoned by their greed and entitlement. I opened my laptop again and looked at Addison's comment, now with even more responses from people judging me based on incomplete information. The injustice of it burned in my chest. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. She hadn't just commented on that one post. She'd gone back through my entire photo album from the trip, leaving passive-aggressive comments on multiple pictures. On a photo of me at the Eiffel Tower. Must be nice to have that kind of disposable income. Some of us have responsibilities. On a picture of my hotel room in Rome. Looks expensive. Hope it's worth leaving your family behind. On a photo of me at the cooking class. Learning to cook for one? Seems about right. Each comment was carefully crafted to sound concerned or humorous while actually being cruel. And the worst part was that people were responding to them, engaging with her narrative that I was a selfish woman abandoning my family for frivolous pleasures. I sat back in my chair, feeling sick. She'd systematically gone through my entire European experience and tried to poison it with guilt and shame. Every beautiful moment I'd shared, every small joy I'd documented, she'd turned into evidence of my selfishness. My phone buzzed with another message from Jennifer Walsh. I saw the other comments. This woman is toxic, and what she's doing is emotional abuse. You've done nothing wrong. Don't let her steal this experience from you. Then another message from a woman named Susan. My daughter-in-law did something similar to me last year, made me feel guilty for every penny I spent on myself while she expected me to fund their lifestyle. Setting boundaries was the hardest thing I ever did, but it saved my sanity. Then another. Diane, I don't know you, but I've been following your journey through a friend's shares. You look happier in these photos than most people look in their entire lives. Don't let anyone take that away from you. The messages kept coming. Women who understood, who had been in similar situations, who recognized the manipulation for what it was. Slowly, the knot in my stomach began to loosen. I looked out at the Gothic Quarter one more time, at the ancient stones that had witnessed centuries of human drama. In the morning, I would fly home to Ohio, back to my small apartment and my quiet life. But something fundamental had changed in me over these 3 weeks. I'd remembered who I was beneath all the roles I'd played for other people. I'd tasted freedom and joy and independence, and I wasn't going to give those up without a fight. I closed my laptop without responding to any of Addison's comments. Let her have her moment of petty victory. When I got home, we were going to have a very different kind of conversation. For the first time since reading her comment, I smiled. Addison had no idea what she'd awakened in me. She was about to find out. The flight home felt like traveling backward through time. Each mile closer to Ohio stripped away another layer of the confidence I'd built over 3 weeks. By the time we descended through the gray November clouds toward Cleveland, I felt like I was putting on an old coat that no longer fit properly. But something was different this time. The woman who had left for Europe might have shrunk back into her old patterns of accommodation and silence. The woman returning had tasted something else entirely. I took a taxi home instead of calling Michael for a ride. It was a small act of independence, but it felt significant. As we drove through the familiar suburbs, everything looked smaller somehow. The strip malls and chain restaurants that had once defined my geography now seemed limited, predictable. My apartment felt like a museum of my former life. Harold's chair still sat in the corner. The throw pillows were exactly where I'd left them. Even the stack of mail Mrs. Peterson had placed on my kitchen counter seemed to belong to someone else. Bills and advertisements addressed to a woman who felt like a stranger now. I'd been home less than an hour when my phone rang. Michael's name on the screen. "Mom, you're back? I just got in." "Good, good. We need to talk." There was something in his voice I couldn't identify. Not the casual entitlement from our last conversation, but something more urgent. "I think we do. Can you come over? Tonight?" I looked around my apartment, at the suitcase I hadn't even unpacked yet, at the European receipts spilling from my purse. The old me would have said yes immediately, would have rushed over to fix whatever problem required my immediate attention. "Tomorrow," I said instead. "I need tonight to settle in." "But Mom," "Tomorrow, Michael." I hung up and turned off my phone. That evening I unpacked slowly, handling each item like an artifact from another life. The cashmere sweater, the leather boots, the flamenco dress I'd worn in Barcelona. I hung them carefully in my closet, next to the practical clothes that had defined my wardrobe for years. The contrast was stark. I made myself a simple dinner and sat at my kitchen table, looking through the photos on my phone. 3 weeks of joy and discovery, now tainted by Addison's poison, but not destroyed by it. The woman in these pictures was someone I wanted to be again, someone I was determined to remain. The next morning brought a steady drizzle, the kind of gray Ohio weather that used to make me feel trapped indoors. I dressed carefully, choosing the cashmere sweater and good boots. If I was going to face my family, I wanted to feel like the woman who had navigated European cities alone, not the one who had spent years shrinking to accommodate their needs. Michael and Addison's house looked the same from the outside, but when I walked up to the front door, I noticed things I'd missed before. The expensive SUVs in the driveway, the professional landscaping, the designer wreath on the door that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. This time, Michael answered the door himself. He looked tired, older somehow, with lines around his eyes I didn't remember seeing before. "Mom, come in." The house felt different, too. Tenser. Addison was sitting at their kitchen island, her laptop open, Tyler's homework spread around her. She looked up when I entered but didn't smile. "How was your trip?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. Educational. Tyler was at the kitchen table, working on what looked like a math worksheet. He glanced up and gave me a small wave. "Hi, Grandma Diane. Dad said you went to Spain." "Spain and France and Italy," I said, sitting down next to him. "I brought you something." I pulled a small package from my purse, a Barcelona football jersey I'd found in a shop near the cathedral. Tyler's eyes lit up as he unfolded it. "Cool. Can I try it on?" "Finish your homework first," Addison said sharply. I looked at her, really looked at her. The perfect makeup, the designer athleisure wear, the way she commanded the space like she owned it, which, I realized, she did. This house, this life, this family dynamic, she had shaped all of it. "Tyler, why don't you go upstairs and work on your homework?" Michael suggested. "We need to talk to Grandma about some grown-up stuff." After Tyler left, the three of us sat in silence for a moment. I waited for them to speak first. "So," Addison finally said, closing her laptop with a decisive snap, "we need to address some things." "Yes, we do. Look, I know you're upset about my Facebook comments, but you have to understand our position here." I kept my expression neutral. "Which position is that?" Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mom, things have been really hard since you left. Addison's hours got cut at the boutique, and my commission at the dealership has been down. We're behind on the mortgage." "I see. And how is that my responsibility?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Addison's perfectly composed expression flickered for just a moment. "It's not about responsibility," she said carefully. "It's about family helping family. You know, like family does." "Like family does," I repeated slowly. "Tell me, Addison, what exactly have you done for me lately? As family?" She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you keep talking about family helping family. So I'm curious what help you've provided to me." "Well, we include you in holidays." "You include me. like I'm a guest instead of Michael's mother. Michael tried to intervene. Mom, that's not. When was the last time either of you called me just to see how I was doing? Not to ask for babysitting or help with something, but just to check on me. Neither of them answered. When was the last time you remembered my birthday without me having to remind you? The silence stretched longer. Have either of you ever asked me what I want, what I dream about, what I need? Addison's composure was cracking. This isn't about what you want, Diane. This is about doing what's right for the family. Whose family? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm not actually part of your family. I'm just a resource you tap when you need something. That's not true, Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Let me share something with you both. In the past 5 years, I've given you $47,000. Down payment help, car repairs, Tyler's medical bills, that emergency loan when your air conditioning broke. Their eyes widened. I don't think they'd ever calculated the total. In that same 5 years, how much money have you spent on me? And I don't mean obligatory birthday gifts. I mean actually investing in my happiness or well-being. Neither of them spoke. The answer is 0. You've spent $0 on me, but you've taken $47,000. And then, when I finally spend my own money on myself, you publicly shame me for it. Addison's face was flushing now. We never asked you to keep track like that. We thought you wanted to help. I did want to help, because I love my family. But there's a difference between helping and being used. Used? Michael's voice rose. Mom, that's a terrible thing to say. Is it? Tell me. What would happen if I needed help? If I got sick or couldn't take care of myself anymore? Would you be there for me the way I've been there for you? The question clearly made them uncomfortable. They exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. Of course we would, Addison said, but it sounded rehearsed. Would you? Or would I be an inconvenience? Another burden on your already tight budget? Mom, you're being unfair, Michael said. We care about you. You care about what I can do for you. There's a difference. I stood up, smoothing my sweater. I want to show you something. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the photos from my trip. Not the ones I'd posted publicly, but the candid shots I'd taken for myself. Me laughing with Rosa in the cooking class. Me trying on the vintage scarf in Paris. Me sitting alone at a cafe in Barcelona looking genuinely content. This is what I look like when I'm happy, I said, holding up the phone. When was the last time you saw me look like this here? They stared at the photos without speaking. I found out something important on this trip. I found out that I'm good company for myself, that I can make my own decisions and live my own life and be perfectly fine without constantly worrying about everyone else's problems. So, what are you saying? Addison's voice was sharp now, defensive. I'm saying that the old arrangement is over. I'm not your emergency fund anymore. I'm not your automatic babysitter. I'm not the person you can count on to solve your problems while you ignore my existence. Michael looked stricken. Mom, you can't just cut us off. I'm not cutting you off. I'm establishing boundaries. If you want a relationship with me, it needs to be based on mutual respect and genuine affection, not financial convenience. Addison stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're being selfish and dramatic. I looked at her for a long moment. Addison, you went through my Facebook photos and left nasty comments designed to make me feel guilty for being happy. You tried to turn my joy into shame. And you call me dramatic? Her face went pale. I think you should leave, she said quietly. I was planning to. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Michael, if you want to have a real relationship with your mother, not your bank account, but your mother, you know where to find me. But if you choose to side with someone who treats me with such disrespect, then you've made your choice. I left them sitting in their perfect kitchen, in their perfect house, surrounded by all the things my money had helped them buy. As I drove home through the gray afternoon, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For years, I'd been afraid that setting boundaries would mean losing my family. Now, I realized I'd never really had them to lose. But I had something else now. I had myself back. The war wasn't over, but the first battle had been won. 3 weeks passed in silence. No calls from Michael, no demands for babysitting, no emergencies that required my immediate financial intervention. For the first time in years, my phone stayed quiet, and I discovered that quiet wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I used the time to redecorate my apartment, not drastically, but meaningfully. I moved Harold's chair to face the window instead of the television, creating a reading nook with good light. I hung the photos from my European trip in the hallway, creating a small gallery of joy that I passed every day. I bought fresh flowers for my kitchen table, the way I had in Barcelona. Most importantly, I started cooking for myself again. Real meals, not just reheated leftovers or microwave dinners. I made Rose's ravioli recipe, taking my time with each step, savoring the process as much as the result. I also started saying no to things. When the church called asking me to coordinate the holiday bake sale, I politely declined. When my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, hinted that she could use help with her Christmas shopping, I suggested she hire one of the teenagers in the building. Each no felt like a small liberation. On a Thursday afternoon in early December, as I was wrapping Christmas gifts I'd actually chosen with care instead of obligation, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Michael standing alone in the hallway. He was wearing his work clothes, but his tie was loose and his hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Mom, Michael. We looked at each other for a moment. He seemed smaller somehow, less sure of himself than I'd ever seen him. Can I come in, please? I stepped aside, but I didn't offer him coffee or ask him to sit down. Old habits. He stood in my living room, looking around as if seeing it for the first time. His eyes lingered on the European photos, then moved to the fresh flowers on my table. The place looks different. I've made some changes. Mom, we need to talk. I'm listening. He took a deep breath. Addison and we've been having problems. I didn't respond. For once, I wasn't going to make it easier for him by asking the right questions or expressing the right concern. She's been angry since you left that day. Really angry. At first it was at you, but then... He trailed off. Then what? Then I started thinking about what you said, about how we treat you, and I realized you were right. The admission seemed to cost him something. He sat down heavily on my couch, his shoulders sagging. I never meant for it to be like that, Mom. I swear I didn't. But it was like that. Yeah, it was. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear children playing in the apartment complex courtyard, their voices bright with the kind of carefreeness I was still learning to reclaim. Addison said I had to choose, Michael continued, between supporting her version of things or having a relationship with you. My heart clenched. And I told her that any woman who would ask me to choose between her and my mother wasn't someone I wanted to be married to. I stared at him. What? We're getting divorced, Mom. I filed the papers last week. The news hit me like a physical blow. Not because I was devastated. If I was being honest, Addison's absence from my life had been a relief, but because of what it meant for Tyler, for Michael, for the life they'd built together. Michael, I never wanted... I know, this isn't about you. Well, not entirely. He looked up at me and I saw Harold in his eyes for a moment. She showed me who she really was when she attacked you online. The woman I married wouldn't have done that. Or maybe she would have, and I just never wanted to see it. What about Tyler? Joint custody. He'll be with me half the time. Michael's expression softened. He's been asking about you, about your trip. He wants to see those pictures you posted. He's welcome to come over anytime. That's actually why I'm here. Michael shifted forward on the couch. I want to ask you something, but I want you to know that it's okay to say no. I'll understand if you say no. I raised an eyebrow. Tyler and I need a place to stay while the house sells, and I figure out what's next. Addison gets to keep it temporarily, but I can't afford the mortgage on my own anyway. He took a shaky breath. I was wondering if we could rent your spare bedroom for a few months. I'd pay you actual rent, market rate, and I'd help with groceries and utilities. Equal partners, not you taking care of us. The request hung between us. 3 months ago, I would have said yes immediately, would have moved mountains to help my son in crisis. Now, I found myself actually considering the implications. What would that look like day to day? He seemed surprised by the question. What do you mean? I mean, what are your expectations? Would you expect me to babysit Tyler while you work? Cook dinner every night? Clean up after both of you? Michael's face reddened. No, God, no. Mom, I'm 38 years old. I can take care of myself and my son. I'm asking to rent a room, not asking you to be our housekeeper. And if Tyler gets sick and needs someone to stay home with him, I take time off work, or I arrange for a sitter. You're his grandmother, not his backup parent. I studied his face, looking for signs of the entitlement that had characterized our relationship for so long. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: genuine respect. What about Addison? Would she be coming here to pick up Tyler? I'd handle all of that. She wouldn't need to interact with you at all. I nodded slowly. I need some time to think about it. Of course. Take all the time you need. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Mom? I'm sorry. For everything. For taking you for granted. For letting Addison treat you the way she did. For not seeing how much you were sacrificing for us. I'm sorry it took losing my marriage to figure it out. But I'm glad I figured it out. After he left, I sat in Harold's chair by the window, watching the afternoon light fade across the courtyard. The old me would have called him back immediately, would have assured him that of course he and Tyler could stay, would have started mentally rearranging my life to accommodate theirs. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and really thought about it. Having Tyler around would be wonderful. I'd missed his bright chatter, his endless questions about everything, the way he still sometimes fell asleep against my shoulder during movie nights, and Michael. For the first time in years, he was approaching me as an equal, asking for help instead of assuming it. But I'd worked hard to reclaim my independence. Was I ready to share my space again, even temporarily? I called my sister Linda that evening. Something I rarely did anymore. Diane, is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just wanted to talk. I told her about Michael's request, about the divorce, about the new dynamic between us. What do you think I should do? Linda was quiet for a moment. Honestly, a year ago, I would have told you to run. You've always been too generous with that boy and he's taken advantage of it. But the way you described this conversation, it sounds like he's finally growing up. So you think I should say yes? I think you should do whatever feels right to you, not what feels right for Michael, or for Tyler, or for anyone else. What feels right for Diane? That night, I lay in bed thinking about the question. What felt right for me? The answer, when it came, surprised me with its clarity. 2 days later, Michael came back for my answer. This time I invited him to sit at my kitchen table, and I made us both coffee. I've thought about your request, I said, and I'm willing to try it, with conditions. Hope flickered in his eyes. What conditions? I pulled out a piece of paper where I'd written everything down. First, this is a rental agreement between adults. You pay me $800 a month, which includes utilities. You buy your own groceries and cook your own meals, though you're welcome to join me for dinner if you ask ahead of time. He nodded. Second, I'm not Tyler's childcare provider. I'm happy to spend time with my grandson, but it needs to be because I want to, not because you need me to. Understood. Third, you maintain the common areas. You do your own laundry. You clean up after yourself and teach Tyler to do the same. Of course. Fourth, this arrangement is month to month. Either of us can end it with 2 weeks' notice if it's not working out. That's fair. I looked up from my list. And fifth, if Addison ever comes to this apartment and treats me with disrespect, you're out immediately. I won't be attacked in my own home. Michael's jaw tightened. She won't be a problem. See that she isn't. He reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you, Mom. You're saving our lives. No, I said firmly. I'm offering you a fair rental arrangement. You're saving your own lives. He smiled, and for the first time in years it looked genuine. When can we move in? Next weekend. That evening, I called Tyler directly. He answered on the second ring, breathless with excitement. Grandma Diane, Dad told me we get to live with you. For a little while, yes. Are you excited? So excited. Can I see all your pictures from Europe? And can you teach me some Spanish words? And can we cook together sometimes? His enthusiasm was infectious. We can do all of those things. Grandma? Yes, sweetheart? I'm sorry Mom was mean to you on Facebook. Dad explained it to me. That wasn't nice. My throat tightened. Thank you, Tyler. That means a lot to me. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, baby. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, looking at the space that would soon be filled with the sounds of family again. But this time, it would be different. This time, I wouldn't disappear into their needs. I wouldn't shrink to accommodate their expectations. This time, I would remain whole. 6 months later, Michael and Tyler moved into their own apartment across town. Our living arrangement had worked beautifully, built on mutual respect and genuine affection instead of obligation and guilt. Tyler still came over every Sunday for our cooking lessons, and Michael called regularly just to talk. I kept traveling. Not elaborate European tours, but weekend trips to places I'd always wanted to see. I took a ceramics class and joined a book club. I dated a kind widower named Frank, who treated me like I was worth his time and attention. And every morning, I woke up in my own space, surrounded by the life I'd chosen for myself. Some days Tyler's artwork hung on my refrigerator, evidence of the love we shared. Other days, fresh flowers filled my vases, evidence of the love I'd learned to give myself. The invisible woman was gone. In her place was someone I was proud to be. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.